I'm Vicky McClure. I've spent years playing police officers on screen. My husband Johnny Owen is a historian and filmmaker. We share a passion for finding out the truth.
Together, we're going on a journey back in time to explore murder cases that have changed modern Britain.
Oh God. He's basically saying, I'll do time for these people, but when I come out, I'm going to kill them. Whether it's unsolved crimes...
Councillor Cochran was the victim. He wasn't the perpetrator of any crime.
Miscarriages of justice.
The last words he said just before he was executed was, Christie done it.
Wow.
Gosh. Or milestone cases that have changed the law.
The government agreed to not disclose it to the public.
Wow.
We'll examine what really happened and how the legacy of these crimes continues to be felt today.
So, Johnny, what are we doing here in West London?
This is a very infamous address in British murder history.
Here?
This is it here. This was 10 Rillington Place. It was here that an infamous serial killer, the name of Christie, lived. They've obviously got rid of the building now and built what you'd call a peace garden. And the reason they knocked it down is because of the horror series of murder that took place inside here. Christie was a man with absolutely no scruples, no humanity in him, no sympathy, empathy.
John Reginald Christie, sometimes referred to as Reg, is one of the UK's most notorious serial killers.
He lived in the ground floor flat at 10 Rillington Place with his wife Ethel Simpson. It was here between 1943 and 1953 that he murdered 7 women, including Ethel and a baby girl.
But I'm not interested in him. What I'm interested in is that they hung an innocent man for some of his murders. And he came from my hometown of Merthyr Tydfil. His name was Timothy Evans.
Oh, right.
He'd come to London, he'd lived with Christie, and he was hung as an innocent man for the murder of his daughter.
Christie and his wife had the rooms at ground level. The Evans family had the top floor flat.
What year was it?
This is the late 40s, early 50s, so not long after the Second World War.
Right.
And Timothy Evans has a real resonance for me because when I was a little boy, my father and my grandfather told me they hung him. And in the words of my grandfather, he said, the state murdered him. Obviously, Christie is a big part of British history, but you know, let's find out the story of why Timothy Evans was hung for a crime he didn't commit, and how such an injustice could happen.
So, where do we begin? Who are we going to meet?
We're going to meet an expert on the case, Michael Buchanan Dunn, who's going to meet us in a local pub. Apparently, it's got something to do with the case.
Great, let's go.
Okay.
Hi, Michael. Nice to meet you.
Michael, nice to meet you.
Hello there.
Johnny, you
Love to meet you.
And you as well.
So, Christie worked here?
Briefly, yeah, as a
Oh,
barman.
right.
He had
Okay.
many jobs across his time, but every so often he would pop in and be a barman. And this was a favourite haunt of Timothy Evans.
Tell me about Timothy Evans.
What we have here is Tim, his wife Beryl, and their daughter Geraldine.
Okay.
They got together early 1947. As happened in that era, it was a fast relationship. So by the September, they got married. By October the following year, Geraldine had come along.
Can I ask, Tim was from Merthyr. What brought him to London?
His father abandoned him early. His mum later remarried. They kind of came here because they'd already got family here. They arrived here when Tim was 10 or 11.
What was his age then that he started to get involved with Christie?
It was in his early 20s. The landlord of the 10 Rillington Place put a sign in the window, and Beryl's friend saw the sign and said, oh, there's a place available. And it's with the Christies, and the Christies are a lovely couple. They've been married for 30 years. This is Reg Christie and his wife, Ethel.
That is a wild-eyed stare, isn't it?
Creepy. And 10 Rillington Place was very working class, very basic, not in a good condition. It didn't have electricity, it only had gas lighting. And the wash house was on the outside, which was shared between the 3 tenants on different floors. Reg Christie was the only person who had access to the back garden.
And it was in the wash house, in the back garden, that on December the 2nd, 1949, the body of Timothy Evans' wife, Beryl, was discovered wrapped in a blanket alongside that of baby Geraldine.
Tell me the story of how Tim Evans ends up being the one who's hung for murder.
He goes to Merthyr Vale, visits family out there, and he walks into the police station there and says, "I've disposed of my wife," in the drain in front of the house.
Wow.
So Timothy went to Merthyr and then confessed.
He did, but problem is, the evidence conflicts with his story. When they find the body of Beryl and ultimately Geraldine Evans back at Rillington Place, he says it was Christie, but the police just don't believe him.
So by then he's changed his story and is blaming his neighbour.
Yes. He actually went to the Old Bailey and he was tried there for the murder of his daughter, found guilty and executed at Pentonville Prison. The last words he said just before he was executed was, "Christie done it."
Wow.
Gosh.
So did Christie give evidence against Timothy Evans in court?
He effectively hung him with the evidence he gave.
But although Christie managed to evade justice in 1950 by blaming Evans, 3 years later, it would be Christie finally facing the hangman's noose.
Could you tell us about how Reg got caught?
At the start of 1953, his life had really gone downhill. He moved out of 10 Rillington Place. He couldn't afford to live there anymore. A gentleman called Beresford Brown moved in. 24th of March 1953, he was renovating the kitchen. Now, as he went to put a wireless radio onto the wall, a little bracket to fit it, he realized it was hollow. He thought, great, extra storage space. But as he peeped through the wallpaper that was there and looked inside, he saw the bodies of 3 dead women.
Oh my Lord, wow, that's going to go cold.
The police turn up, they find the 3 bodies in the alcove, 2 in the garden, his wife buried underneath the floorboards. Reg Christie is taken to the police station. Initially, he denies any involvement in anything. Then he confesses to all of the murders except Geraldine.
The baby.
Absolutely. He put himself forward in his statements as the victim, that it was these ladies who wanted him, and therefore he was helping them out by having sex with them, and then he killed them to put them out of their misery.
What a sicko.
It's an astonishing story.
Christie was tried at the Old Bailey, was also executed at Pentonville Prison, but obviously by that point, they realized that an innocent man has been executed for the murder of Geraldine.
Gosh.
Oh.
There's just over 3 years between the executions of Evans in 1950 and Christie in 1953, in which time Christie murdered 4 more women, including his wife, Ethel. Christie's crimes are truly appalling. He was clearly profoundly disturbed. No conscience whatsoever, no care for anybody around them. Not that it makes the murder okay by any stretch, it's really hard to understand.
You're interested in finding out more about him, aren't you?
I am. Maybe we can discover just why his head was twisted the way it was.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to be really keen to find out more about the victims.
And I'm interested in Timothy Evans because he was from the same town as me. So I'm keen to go back to Wales to find out how he ended up, in the orbit and the prey of Christie.
And why he confessed to a murder he hadn't committed.
Between us, we've got to find out how an innocent man ended up swinging, as they used to say, being hung for the crimes of somebody else.
Yeah, very important. London, March 1950. 25-year-old Timothy Evans is hanged for the murder of his baby daughter Geraldine, after also being charged with the murder of his wife, Beryl. Crimes that in fact were committed by his downstairs neighbour John Christie. Christie also killed 6 other women and would be hanged 3 years after Evans.
I want to know why Timothy Evans initially confessed to murdering his wife and daughter. So I'm heading to Wales to find out more about Evans's background.
I always enjoy coming home to Wales. I always feel as if I've never left, which sounds a bit strange. I feel a deep connection to the country and the people coming from there. I always get a bit of a tingle when I go home. It's a beautiful day to coming back, actually. So yeah, croeso I Cymru. Welcome to Wales.
In the early 20th century, Wales's biggest export was coal.
Somebody once described this as the Persian Gulf of its day. It was the best quality coal in the world, something that people were enormously proud of, Welsh steam coal. It was used by all the world's navies and ships, shipping liners.
And some of the earliest coal pits in South Wales were opened right here in Merthyr Tydfil.
There you go, look at that. Mine and Timothy Evans' hometown. Merthyr Tydfil, God's country. Let's go speak to some people.
To find out what the town was like when Evans grew up here, I'm meeting up with a very good friend and local historian, Hugh Williams.
There he is.
Hey, Johnny, how are you doing? Greetings.
Hugh Williams.
Good to be here.
Thank you for joining me. The perfect person, I think, to paint a picture of what kind of world Timothy Evans grew up in, the early 20s, Merthyr Tydfil borough.
Oh, it was grim. Previously, iron, steel, and then coal were the lifeblood of the place. There was work in abundance until and just after the Great War. Worldwide slump, coal was no longer needed on a massive international basis, and therefore economic, social depression set in. This is the era into which a young lad like Timothy Evans was born. 80% of registered male were counted as unemployed. That's probably an undercount.
Wow.
Suicide rates escalate.
Yeah.
So you gravitate to somewhere else and try and make a better life, of course, and London beckons in the 1930s. You know, Timothy Evans is a brave soul in many ways, going to London and surviving there for the years that he did. There's that feeling that no good comes to anybody from Wales who goes to London.
Yes.
You should stay home or come home and forget your London accent. So where's Vicky, who I've never met, and you keep promising to bring her down? What is she up to these days, dare I ask?
She's in London. She's got the Christie side of things, which is pretty unsavoury.
Oh, right. You know what I mean?
So, so she's just texted me, actually, saying she's on her way to meet a former murder detective turned crime historian, Dr. Paul Stickler.
I'm hoping Dr. Stickler, who specialises in miscarriages of justice, can help explain how Christie managed to commit so many murders. Thank you for meeting with me.
My pleasure.
How does this compare in severity to the other murders that you've dealt with?
I did murder investigation for a living for a big part of my career. But Christie, he's right up there. He's one of the most dangerous people probably of the last century. This is so protracted, it's prolonged. In 1943 to 1953, he's killed 8 people, including, it has to be said, a baby.
I'd love to talk about victims.
He preyed on vulnerable women. We know that Christie will go out looking for sex workers, and some of the women he met did announce that they were pregnant, and it looks like he intimated, well, I can deal with that. So I've got a cure for that. I can sort that all out, because he is actually carrying out abortions, which is illegal at the time. Ruth First is what we believe to be Christie's first victim. She's Austrian, in fact. Purged from Nazi Austria in the 1930s, came to Britain, became down on her luck, and then turned to prostitution. And that's when she met Christie. Ruth went missing in 1943. Muriel Eady was murdered in 1944. She had catarrh, and he probably hinted, look, come back to my house, I've got a cure for that. The next attack we can connect to Christie is the Evans family in 1949. When Ethel was strangled in December of '52, they'd been married for 30 years. Rita Nelson was effectively the first victim of 1953. She was a sex worker and had become pregnant. Kathleen Maloney, the second victim of 1953, she turned to prostitution. Christie had been taking new photographs of her and a friend of hers back at the house. And then this is Hectorina. Later on in 1953, she had become homeless. And he'd invited her back into the house and strangled her.
God bless her. I mean, they're so young. And in terms of the way in which she performed the murders?
What he was doing to these women was luring them back to his house. He did gas them, strangle them, and he did rape them. And I think probably he was one of these individuals who would have been turned on by the power, the threat of violence. We don't really know whether intercourse was post or ante-mortem. So did he have sex with them when they're dead, or whilst they're still alive, and then strangled them? He just said, they tried to attack me. All I was doing was defending myself, and the next thing I know, they're dead. And the same applied actually to Ethel, his wife. He actually said the poor woman was suffering. She was unhappy, she was depressed, she didn't like living in the area anymore. She'd been trying to commit suicide anyway. There's no evidence to suggest that were true.
The wrong man was hung, and a lot of bodies were found in his property eventually. What went so wrong with this case?
1949 was a time when the police were pretty much allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. It was a dark, dark time in terms of police investigation. Timothy Evans said he put the body down the drains. They took it at face value, and they just made a judgment very early on that Evans was the man that's responsible for this, and didn't investigate this impartially.
As it turned out, Evans' statement couldn't have possibly been true. A slight man, little over 5.5 feet and no more than 9 or 10 stone. There was no way he could have lifted off the drain cover to dispose of his wife's body. And in any case, her body wasn't even there.
They didn't really start digging up the back garden or looking at the garden seriously, because they closed their mind to the possibility anybody else could be involved.
Yeah.
Had they searched the garden and found the bodies of 2 ladies, the focus would have shifted very, very quickly to Christie.
While Vicky's learning about Christie's horrific crimes, I'm eager to find out more about Evans. So I've come to Merthyr Town, the football club I've supported since I was a boy, to meet Phil Carradise, a local historian who's researched and written about Timothy Evans.
You know, he was intellectually very, very limited. He was illiterate. He never learnt to read. He could just about write his own name, and even that was usually misspelled. There were various reasons for that, one of which was this tubercular verruca on his foot, which meant he missed out on such a lot of education. But in an attempt to try to compensate for that, he became a fantasist and loved telling stories about himself. And that was part and parcel of his way of coping. The family moved to London, and he meets Beryl, and he marries. It was a violent, violent relationship. Money was short, money was tight.
Yeah.
But what he's got, he tends to spend on alcohol. With the result that fights between them, and we are talking physical fights, often happen.
So he's no angel then?
Frustration, I think. Things he would like to say, things he'd like to do, couldn't, and so lash out.
Despite their troubled relationship, after baby Geraldine is born, Beryl falls pregnant again. Feeling the financial strain, they discuss terminating the pregnancy and turn to Christie for help. But when Beryl dies at Christie's hands, Evans tells police he killed her.
Why would you confess to something you haven't done?
It's a very difficult question to answer, but he was undoubtedly under stress.
Yes.
I mean, he would have been feeling guilty. At the end of the day, he has got his wife to have an abortion.
Yeah.
And not only that, he's also trying to protect Christie. So that's one. And wanting to be somebody special.
Yeah.
There's 2. You know, wow, I'm going to tell a story and people are going to listen to what I've got to say.
An audience.
An audience,
Yes.
exactly. So there's all of that mixing up inside him.
So he confesses in Merthyr, but the police in London realise his statement about hiding Beryl's body in the sewer can't be true. So what happens then?
He changes his story.
Yeah. And what does the new story say about it?
She was pregnant, and Christie offered to get rid of it.
Okay, so he mentions Christie for the
He mentions Christie for the first time. The news story says Timothy goes off to work, and when he comes back, Christie says, I'm afraid she's dead.
Right.
She died as part of the abortion.
Okay.
And Geraldine, I have a family that will welcome this child.
Okay.
Christie urges Evans to leave London and go back to Merthyr, whilst he, Christie, disposes of Beryl's remains and rehouses baby Geraldine with a family in East Acton.
The police take Evans back to London. They find the bodies in the wash house at the back.
Yeah.
And not just Beryl, the baby's there as well, wrapped in sheets, which obviously Christie has done. And so it goes to the next admission, which is that I killed her, and I strangled her. Yeah.
So he's putting in detail that could only have happened if the London police are saying to him, well, actually, the bodies are here, not in the sewer, they're in the outhouse. Yes, they're in the outhouse.
That's exactly it.
Wow.
The police, when they investigated, didn't even notice that the garden fence was held up by the thigh bone of one of the victims. They just didn't, because they had Timothy Evans, thank you very much, and he was going to the hangman's rope.
In the trial, in January 1950, it becomes Christie's word versus Timothy Evans's. Unbelievably, Christie had been a special constable in the police and a postman, and ultimately was far more credible than a barely literate man from Merthyr who changed his story more than once.
The jury was out for just 40 minutes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
40 minutes?
40 minutes, and then in with the guilty verdict. And Timothy, nothing was taken into account about his life and the lack of education, mental age, or none of that was taken into consideration, at least not until 3 years after Timothy was dead.
Evans was executed at Pentonville Prison on March 9th, 1950. Only with Christie's arrest and confession 3 years later did it become clear how flawed the police investigation had been. Even then, whilst Christie confessed to the murder of Beryl, he denied killing Geraldine. So police could maintain that while they may not have got their facts straight, both Christie and Evans deserved to hang. The question remains, why, if he was innocent, did Evans confess?
I think it's been well worth coming to Merthyr, really important actually, just to give us a kind of idea of who Timothy Evans was and the world he came from. The confessions are fascinating. The third one, suddenly he gets to London and the statement changes completely. So it feels to me now that Evans is being coerced, no doubt about that. So what I'd like to do now is get back to London, speak to Vicky and take a really good look at those statements and find out exactly what's going on.
We're looking at why Welshman Timothy Evans was hanged in 1950 for the murder of his baby daughter Geraldine, when in fact both Geraldine and Evans' wife Beryl were murdered by their neighbour, John Reginald Christie of 10 Rillington Place.
Evans, who had a low IQ and was illiterate, made 3 false confessions. I want to find out whether the police pressured him into them. Vicky and I are heading to meet 2 forensic linguists whose research and expertise is key to understanding the Evans case.
This looks very interesting.
The Timothy Evans case marks the birth of forensic linguistics in the UK.
Okay.
In 1953, Christie was hanged for the murders at 10 Rillington Place, and this caused massive controversy. A linguist, Jan Svartvik, was approached by a committee campaigning for Tim Evans's innocence to show what's wrong in these statements.
When he published his report in 1968, he named it The Evans Statements, a Case for Forensic Linguistics, and that was the first time the term had really been used.
So what did Svartvik do?
Each of us have a sort of individual way of using the language.
Not just your accent, but your word choice, your syntax. And Svartvik wanted to find things that he could quantify and test. Who's the true author of the text? Is it Evans or is it a police officer?
Yes.
That's the legal question at the heart of the analysis. This is the second Notting Hill statement, which is the most controversial statement.
Yeah.
Svartvik, he goes through it paragraph by paragraph. One of the things he's most interested in is what he calls mobile relator clauses. These are clauses that have the word then or the word also in them. It's a mobile relator because it can go between the pronoun and the verb. So I then did this, or it can go before the pronoun, then I did this.
Okay.
The statement describes Evans murdering Beryl in November 1949 after a row turns violent. The first paragraph says, I asked her if she'd been paying for the furniture and she said she had. Then I showed her the letter I had received from Broderick's. Then she admitted she hadn't been paying it.
You've got then before the I.
Yes.
Then I showed her the letter. Then she admitted. But as you scroll down the text into paragraph 2, 3, and 4, where he kills Beryl and then kills the baby, you get all these I then statements.
I then slipped downstairs and opened the back door, then went up and carried my wife's body down to the wash house and placed it under the sink. I then blocked the front of the sink up with pieces of wood so the body wouldn't be seen.
Suddenly you have more of what we believe to be the police version of these types of clauses, which is the I then version rather than the then I version.
It's a very sort of typical kind of police speak. If you think sort of I then proceeded in a northwesterly direction to the premises. How often in general kind of language is that used? Not very often. How often is it used in police statements, however, and the numbers go through the roof?
Oh, really?
Wow, it's fascinating.
In the Merthyr Tydfil statements, there's very low rates of the use of that clause.
Yes.
In the start and the end of the Notting Hill statement, it's like the Merthyr Tydfil statements.
Yes.
So what does that tell us?
I think the explanation is the first Notting Hill statement sort of did for him, but there wasn't enough detail to stand up in court. Right. So then they went back and they wrote what the police wanted in the statement, and that's why there's so much more police language in that second Notting Hill statement.
Right. So did the Notting Hill police have an agenda?
Yes, these are bad statements and they reflect the agenda of the police. That central incriminating section of the second Notting Hill statement is the language of the police. Tim Evans did not say those words, and it's clear even against the standards of the day that there is police malpractice. Police have inserted their narrative into these witness statements to turn them into confessions.
Yeah.
Right.
So, in conclusion,
he shouldn't have been hanged on the basis of these statements.
Jan Svartvik delivered his analysis of Evans' statements in 1968, by which time it must have been obvious that Evans should never have been convicted or executed. But I want to know what happened before then, in the period immediately following Christie's execution in 1953, when it was clear that police had stitched Evans up.
Okay, so we've got some Daily Mirrors here from 1953. Millions of people would have read this. Was Timothy John Evans hanged in 1950 really a murderer?
Sir David Maxwell 5 had appointed Mr. John Scott Henderson to examine the evidence given in the Evans case and of the Christie case, and to report whether there may have been any miscarriage of justice in the conviction of Evans for the murder of Geraldine Evans.
So once they catch Christie, they realise something's up and they launch an inquiry.
There are obviously questions being asked now, Vic, isn't there?
A witness at the inquiry will be John Christie, the Notting Hill monster, who has said that he killed Mrs. Evans, but who denies that he killed Evans' baby. Christie is due to be hanged tomorrow week.
Also, case is not dead yet, Dan.
But it's shocking, really. They've asked him to be a witness. Scott Henderson concluded in 1953 that Christie's confessions couldn't be relied upon because he'd pled insanity at his trial. In his view, therefore, Evans was likely guilty of the murder of Geraldine at least. His findings were highly controversial.
His report was later sharply criticised in Parliament.
In 1965, the journalists Ludovic Kennedy and Harold Evans formed the Timothy Evans Committee to push for a posthumous pardon. By now, the growing anti-death penalty movement was arguing that his execution, along with Derek Bentley's in January 1953 and abuse victim Ruth Ellis's in July 1955, proved that the legal system was fatally flawed.
The campaign worked. The newly elected Labour government set up a second inquiry, headed by High Court Judge Daniel Braben.
Daily Mirror, Tuesday, November 23rd, 1965.
15 years after he's been hanged.
New look into the House of Horror.
Timothy John Evans was on trial again yesterday at the law courts. The inquiry springs from a long, sometimes bitter controversy about the hanging of Timothy Evans.
Braben announced the findings of his inquiry into the Evans case the following year.
Daily Mirror again, Thursday, October 13th, 1966.
After 13 years of controversy, a judge suggests Evans was hanged for the crime he didn't commit. It is more probable than not that Evans did not kill his 14-month-old daughter, Geraldine. So he doesn't think he killed Geraldine, the daughter. That it is more probable than not that Christie killed baby Geraldine, a killing in cold blood, which Christie would be more likely to do. Finally, that the probability is that both these men killed and that they both killed by strangulation.
So even though they're exonerating Evans of Geraldine's murder, they're still saying he killed his wife, Beryl.
Christie has admitted to murdering these women. He's admitted it.
I don't understand how he could have come to that conclusion. Genuinely, I don't.
So the system isn't known to be hanging somebody for a crime that they didn't commit. They see Timothy as a dangerous man.
Yes.
And they don't want him to be hung for nothing.
Yeah.
So the judge and the police don't be seen to be getting everything completely wrong.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. It would be great to meet somebody to make some kind of sense of what's going on with this. To sort of explain to us how they've got to these conclusions, as I just think we need to find out.
Agreed. We're trying to understand how, in his 1965 to 1966 public inquiry, Justice Daniel Braben found that Timothy Evans had been justly executed for murder in 1950, even though the evidence pointed overwhelmingly to serial killer John Christie.
Christie had even confessed to the murder of Evans' wife, Beryl, although denied murdering their baby daughter, Geraldine. Evans had initially confessed to both murders, but it later became clear that he committed neither. Crime writer Kate Summerscale recently published a detailed account of the Rillington Place murders called The Peep Show. We've asked her to share her insights.
There you go.
What stands out to you about the case?
When the police caught Christie, he said things like, "It must have been me." During the trial too, he spoke about it almost in the third person. Even when he was owning up to it, he was somehow keeping it at arm's length and preserving his rather sort of prim and moralistic, almost prissy kind of demeanour, a sort of passivity.
Yes.
Which is really chilling and confusing when read in conjunction with accounts of what had actually happened to these women. He did plead madness, but the things he did were too premeditated, really, to be thought of as acts of madness, particularly in the case of his wife, where he forged documents in order to get money from her bank account after she died, which is why the Crown chose that case to prosecute him for, because there was so much evidence of rational thinking. He had planned her murder and then he'd covered it up. So at both ends, he'd known what he'd done. I mean, it's so detailed.
I mean, I know it's cold in here, but it's like, it really does give me the chills, this story. Was there anything that you've picked up through all of that research that we might not know?
Tim Evans was innocent of murder.
Yes.
I do think so.
Yeah.
But he was implicated.
Yes.
What makes you say that?
I found a document in the National Archives that have been filed for many years that was not open to the public till 1993, a memo written by a prison guard to his boss at Brixton Prison, detailing a conversation that he and Christie had immediately after Christie was sentenced to death. At this moment, the time for stories and manipulations was presumably over. And he said to the guard, "I could tell you something that might be useful to you, and you could even make some money out of it by selling it to the papers. If they only knew they could do me for the murder of the little girl." It was the one time Christie took responsibility for murdering the child. And he said that Tim Evans had encouraged him to kill Beryl, that he'd said he could do her in while he was performing an abortion. To me, it helped explain why Tim Evans had told so many different stories, because he felt so deeply implicated in the crimes, despite the fact that it was Christie who had killed both of them.
Yes.
Evans was wrongfully convicted and hanged, but the reason the story is so murky is that he knew more than he could say.
But this crucial memo from Christie's Brixton prison guard isn't the only bombshell Kate's got for us.
I also found some letters between a civil servant and someone in the government, a Conservative government, in 1953 discussing this memo, and they agreed to not disclose it to the public. The death penalty was an extremely hot topic at the time. A lot of Labour MPs were campaigning for its abolition. And the government was keen to not release this suggestion that so recently a man had been hanged by mistake.
That's shocking, isn't it? So all the people who wrote about these cases in the 50s and early 60s, including the Brabin inquiry, never saw this document.
And so perhaps the judge's strange conclusion was a reflection of that. But what the judge concluded was enough to enable Timothy Evans to be given a pardon by the Queen in 1966. And it was also enough to confirm that there had been a miscarriage of justice, which helped those who wanted to abolish the death penalty.
Yes. Okay.
And this was one of the 3 cases, and most high-profile cases, that helped the campaigners against it.
She was fascinating to talk to. I really enjoyed the chat.
It doesn't get more shocking than trying to cover up or putting away for 30, 40 years a confession from a serial killer that he'd killed a baby.
That, to me, is disgraceful on the government's part, that wasn't taken into consideration in any which way.
Yeah, any inquiry should have known about that.
Yeah. Those facts could have come out a lot sooner.
What it really explained to me was Timothy Evans was the beginning of the end for the death penalty in this country. So I think that was a brilliant explanation for me.
I mean, what an example of a case to have changed so many things.
Yeah, probably one of the most important law changes in 20th century Britain, and Timothy Evans was right at the vanguard of that.
Campaigners for Timothy Evans, including Ludovic Kennedy and Harold Evans, welcomed the abolition of the death penalty in 1969. But their battle to have his conviction quashed and expunged from the record books continued for decades. Our final meeting is with barrister Edward Fitzgerald, who represented the Evans family in their fight for justice.
Evans is a really terrible miscarriage of justice. Firstly, there's the extraction of a confession from a suspect of low intelligence.
Yes.
Secondly, there's the appalling fact that the chief prosecution witness was in fact the murderer himself. And then the final thing, of course, is the death penalty. This was the execution of someone from a humble background with a low IQ, obviously vulnerable, despite the fact that everything called for not carrying out the death penalty. But unfortunately, the Scott Henderson report and then the Brabin report did not make the necessary findings of innocence.
Yeah. How did you get involved in the case?
Well, originally I was involved with getting compensation for the family. In 1966, the Home Secretary had granted a free pardon, effectively accepting that Timothy Evans was innocent and had been wrongly executed.
Yeah.
But the conviction remained. And of course, in the famous case of Bentley, the Court of Appeal quashed the conviction and exposed the full extent of the miscarriage of justice. So the family was saying, we would also like, in this most notorious of miscarriages of justice, to have the conviction quashed.
What year would this have been?
That was in the year 2000.
Okay.
The Home Secretary accepted that compensation should be paid. There had been a miscarriage of justice, but he failed to persuade the CCRC, the Criminal Cases Review Commission, to refer the case back on the basis that it wasn't necessary because everybody knew he was innocent. That's what they said.
Yeah.
Right.
When we challenged that decision, the High Court said everybody knows that this is the most notorious miscarriage of justice in English legal history. So what's the point of referring the case back?
Why would they not do that?
It was what more is there to be achieved? But strictly speaking, even a full pardon leaves the conviction there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still on the books, as it were. From the family's point of view, to actually have it laid bare by a forensic analysis and a quashing of the conviction would have been important.
I couldn't agree more.
Do you think they'll ever get what they want?
Well, there is still a possibility of the Criminal Cases Review Commission referring the matter back, but they did decide that it was not necessary and not appropriate to refer it back.
It's the energy, isn't it, as well, that
Yes.
a family has to continue to...
Must be very wearing.
It must be. I mean, you must
Yes.
get to a point where
Yeah.
you go, we have to put an end to this for, you know, their own sanity.
That's right. I think there was an element of the High Court saying we don't need to go any further.
Yeah.
Whether the state needs to devote that scale of resources to further vindication of his innocence.
Yes.
So the state knew in 1953 that Timothy Evans shouldn't have been executed. Yet it took another 50 years to officially accept his innocence, and even today, his sentence remains in the legal record. It's a sobering reminder of the wrongs people in positions of power sometimes perpetrate for what they believe to be the greater good.
Here I am sat in London with my lovely wife, and I'm thinking about being a little kid in a terraced house in Merthyr Tydfil, and my grandfather saying this name, Timothy Evans, and the state murdered him. Father, uncles all agreeing. Yeah, it was terrible. Now, I know he was a big part of the death penalty being abolished.
And we know more about Evans' deep character flaws that contributed to the events that caused his wrongful conviction and execution.
But did he deserve to be hung for that? It just goes to show these cases aren't black or white. But justice doesn't stay still. It has to be constantly evolving, and we keep trying to make it better.
Back in that time, you know, they weren't looking into the character of people in that same way where we do now. The systems, policing, law, forensics, technology, they didn't have those kind of things. They're only going to do as good.
Yeah, but eternal vigilance on our part to make sure that it tries to be the best it can possibly be.
I mean, it was such a tricky case, wasn't it? What happened to those women in that house? Jeez, I mean, you can't even bear to think. They were going there vulnerable. They were going there for help.
Christie's the one that kind of, you know, he really lives in your nightmares, really, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's been a ride, for sure.
Well, Vicky,
Well,
murder made history.
I know. It did, quite rightly. Next time, this is where it all began.
This is where he found his victims.
Newspapers dubbed him Bible John.
She became the only eyewitness to the whole thing.
There's a serial killer that's still not been caught.
He was never put in front of an ID parade.
Wow.
Hugely suspicious.